Welcome to Cosmic Brilliance, folks, with today's special guest, Karen Martel, and additional supporting guests, Ileana, the Star Traveler. Karen Martel is a writer and artist residing in Quebec, Canada. She has published several online short stories and novels, as well as the trilogy that we will be discussing today, titled Guardians of the Crystals, science fiction fantasy adventure. And I beg to differ because it is actually science fact adventure, but we know how that goes. So her story takes place over 11,000 years ago on Earth. And in addition, Karen is a mother who works full-time in the energy industry and also a ceramic artist. My second guest, Ileana the Star Traveler, who I've done several shows with, is a psychic, crystal healer, author, and researcher who recalls several lifetimes during the Atlantis era. I invited Ileana here today because she was the one, Karen, who recommended that I check you out and told me that the history you wrote about in your trilogy is accurate. Now, while reading your 3 books, I learned in a very entertaining fashion more details about crystalline technology, as well as beautiful descriptions of the Atlantis environments and outposts. And I might add, you certainly wove in exciting non-stop adventures sprinkled with saucy spiritual sexual romance that your female protagonist, Dianu, the Crystal Guardian, had with not one, folks, but 3 soulmate twin flame lovers. Woohoo! Let's hear it for Karen. So with that titillating introduction, welcome Karen and Ileana, and thank you for waiting so long for this show to happen.
Oh, thank you, Merrily. It's nice being here. This is my first ever Zoom thingy, so um,
Oh, how fun. Okay, Karen, let's start at the appropriate point, the beginning of your life. How young were you when you had your first awakening?
well, my first awakening was actually back in 1995 when I started reading. I was probably more or less drawn to literature by like David Icke, The Truth Will Set You Free. I started reading several books that were more or less in the spiritual realm, and it's a lot of information that I was drawn to because of the people that surrounded me too. And it's not really what you would consider an awakening, but I was raised a Roman Catholic, so that's like the religion, going to church every Sunday and everything like that. And when I was 8 years old, when the priest would be up front reading from the gospel or something, I'd be sitting there, and I was like 8 years old, and I say to my mom, I said, Mom, that's not how things worked back then. My mom would look at me and she goes, you better shut up because you'll get a spanking when we get home. And I would say stuff that would just come out of the blue, like I always had this technology based mind in. And when I would be listening to the priest, I would be saying, Mom, that sounds like a rocket that's taken off. That doesn't sound like God coming down. My mom would get so upset with me. And I think that was more or less what brought me towards my awakening. And then I read Chariots of the Gods. I think I was about 12 years old when I read that. And then from there, that's when it really exploded.
Wow, that's so cool. So you basically retain pretty consciously a knowingness
Yeah.
of certain things, and we're not afraid to discuss it. Now, in our pre-talk, you mentioned your French-Irish ancestry and that your father was in the Navy military and also psychic,
Yeah.
right?
He didn't talk about it around my mother, but when he was alone with me, he would talk about a lot of stuff, even experiences that he had, knowings. Like once when he was on his ship, he was in the port of Spain. It was at night, and that night he was supposed to sleep in the forward aft part of the ship, and he actually had to go a couple bunks down. And during the middle of the night, they were rammed by accident by another ship that killed several of his crew members. So stuff, he always talked about stuff like that, but never openly. more or less when I was alone with him, he would tell me all kinds of things.
So he knew you were daddy's girl, and there was a tight
Yeah.
connection there.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And then if my memory serves me right, love, in our pre-talk, I think you said at 3 years old, is this true? You remembered about your mother? Why don't you share that?
Well, it's a memory that's kind of far away. I remember I was like 3 years old and I was drawn on a piece of paper and my aunt was there. It's my dad's sister. And then all of a sudden I was talking to her and telling her that I knew my mother's mom and that I was actually her. And like I was 3 years old and I was trying to explain this there, and my aunt was there and she was looking at me and she was going, why are you saying stuff like that for? She was saying this in French. She's French. So, it's like a memory I had, and she was like a bit angry with me, but it always stayed in my consciousness. So
So
it's,
you remembered being your mother's mother in
yeah,
previous life. So
yeah.
it
And my
sounds like your
daughter.
mother was like scared and kind of certain programming, and you and your dad.
Yeah, my mother wasn't raised. My mother, I never talked about anything like that because she was, even today, I mean, she's almost 80 and I still have a hard time to get things through. Like I've opened her up a tiny bit, but not that much.
Mm.
So, I can't really talk about anything like, she doesn't believe anything outside of what the church has told her. So,
I
but
think
my
a lot
dad,
of our subscribers and listeners will relate
mm,
to that, quite
yeah,
frankly. So now you have a daughter, Chloe, too,
yeah, yeah. My
right?
daughter's 26. Yeah.
26. And are you both connected? Do you have in terms of remembering past lives, like say in Egypt or Sumeria or things like that? Tell us
Um,
a little bit about that.
Me, I think I've had just flashes. I'm not psychic or anything. I've just always had little flashes. My daughter, I think she has a lot more memory, but she doesn't really talk that much about it because she's never really wanted. My daughter is very, very psychic. She still communicates with her dead grandmother, so she's always had these experiences growing up. Like I remember when she was like 4 years old. Her paternal grandfather had died in the middle of the night. We didn't know about it until the next day, but in the middle of the night, she woke up crying. And then later, she was able to explain to me that grandpapa was actually sitting at the base of her bed when he passed. And when her grandmother, her paternal grandmother, died, it was the same thing. During the wake, she was probably about 10 or 11 at this time. And I mean, like she's always been a very calm, quiet kid. And we were at the wake and she came upstairs. She had gone to the bathroom, which was downstairs in the building. And she came upstairs and she saw her grandmother. Her grandmother came to talk to her, and her grandmother asked her if she could please tell everybody to stop grieving and crying over her because she couldn't detach herself. And then my daughter, she looks at me and she goes, I'm not doing that, Mom. Everybody's going to think I'm a freak. And I said, well, you don't have to, just leave it be like it is there. And that's it.
And
So,
that's such an important lesson,
yeah.
Karen, because that's so true. I've heard
Mhm.
that from many on the other side, like try to stop grieving, it pulls us back down. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So also during the pre-talk,
Mhm.
you showed me a painting you did, which I was blown away in your living room. And this will be on the show. And this is
Mhm.
the painting, folks. And tell us about that and what happened there. What caused you to
Well,
paint that?
every once in a while, I'm inspired to do paintings like that. I have one in back of me. And if I lift it, I think you can see it's a Sumerian line.
Mm.
So that painting, it's like a triple painting. I saw that in an archaeological journal back in 2016. They had discovered a new tomb. I say tomb because I'm thinking in French. They discovered a new tomb in Egypt in the Valley of the Kings. And I can't remember because I read it and it was like, all I did is I read it and then I did a screenshot of the wall. They had taken a picture of the wall exactly in the same order that you see it. And it was Horus, the Egyptian god Horus, on the left, and on the right side it was Anubis, and in the middle, there was this pharaoh. But I didn't see the name of the pharaoh. I don't think they had gotten down to discover, and it was like an unknown pharaoh that they had mentioned. And
So it wasn't Isis. Is it a female? I can't really tell.
no, it looks like a female, but the way it was in the painting, it looked like it was female, male. I couldn't really tell what it was.
Or androgynous.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And
Because many of the higher ones are androgynous.
yeah, and there was actually no information about who it was, or they hadn't done all the legwork to decipher the hieroglyphics and everything. And you know, it's for sure, whenever we see Horus was the Egyptian god. Horus was the son of Isis and what's the other guy's name?
Osiris.
Yeah, Osiris. I was searching for it. He was their son. And usually the Egyptian pharaohs were all, they were all the earthly, what we call the earthly representation of Horus on earth. So that's usually why whenever we see Horus next to a pharaoh, it's because he was given that, more or less that rank, and that he was a representation of Horus on earth.
So Horus was kind of, I think, from research, was the deity of war in the sky too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of a big, so very interesting that you were compelled to draw that.
Yeah, that's what you can say. I have a lot of stuff compels me. When there's something that compels me, I have to sit down and do it. So I don't know why I did it, and at the same time I'm saying, okay, well, I'll put that in my living room. It'll be decor, but that's all my artwork that I do is all because I'm being compelled. The same thing with the writing. The writing is something that compelled me for years to get out.
Oh, fun. Well, we'll get to that. And Ileana, anything you want to add to what she shared so far, or your intuitive takes on it?
Well, with the writing, I'm similar. Like when I'm compelled, I get downloads from the universe, I will just start writing and I will save it and figure out which book it belongs to down the road. Once I see the full formation of the information coming in and sort it out, because it takes time to coalesce what the image means, what the wording means. Like Merrily, for example, remember I sent you yesterday that that image of the crafts coming out of the portal and the universe, and it had purple and blue, the blue and the pink and the purple crystals. Like that was a communication from the new beings, the Arunali that came in, eighth dimensional crystalline beings, but they also have ships. They can create things. So it was a message of the crystalline body, to start upgrading the crystalline body and to balance physicality with the crystalline essence that we all have, because we have water molecules inside us and we have crystals inside. And that's connected to the ancient Atlanteans, the crystalline technology. So they said, connect with your crystalline body, connect with your crystalline essence. That balances the physical and the energetic. So, and you had similar things that came up when you looked at that image. So, and
well,
you
and it's
described it to
related
me.
to what we're talking about today too, which is we're getting into Guardians of the Crystals. And so I had one last question about your personal life, Karen, that a lot of my guests, I'm finding out, that are evolved and sensitive end up moving their homes to where there's a pyramid or something. Did that happen with you at all?
It's kind of weird how it happened, because in 2000, I had my daughter was only she was only 3 years old. In 2000, I had separated with her father, and I had just decided, like, I left him the house and I said, I'm just going to get myself my own house. And that was that. But the thing is that this was at the beginning of May 2000, and I had no idea where I was going to go. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, I think 2 days later, it's really, really strange how it all happened. A friend of mine, an old friend of mine that I hadn't heard of from in years, out of the blue said, hey, Karen, I'm putting up my house for sale if you know anybody that's interested. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, this guy lives on the side of a mountain. It's part of an old mountain range that we have in Quebec that's part of the Appalachians. And they're very, very ancient mountains. And he had a little house just on the flank of the mountain. So I said to him, I said, well, I'm interested. So we went to the notary. I went to my bank, and like 2 weeks later, I was moving in. And it just happened like that.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing. And
Wow.
it's a place that when I moved into it, I always liked the place, and the energy here is really incredible. Anybody that comes into the house, they feel it. And this house is full of orbs. Like whenever I take my camera out, they're full of like, and they go in streams. They're not like all over the place. Certain times of the day, they're coming up through the floor, going through the ceiling. Later on the day, they'll be coming through the west, going out through the east, and they're like rivers of orbs. Like, and I've filmed a lot of them, and I put them up on my YouTube channel. And the energy here is really incredible. I feel like they're part of the earth energy, because there's a lot of water that runs under the home, because I have like a mountain stream that's on the property. And when you go around the side of the mountain, it looks exactly, it's one part of the mountain looks like a perfect three-sided pyramid. And there's no houses, there's no buildings. They only build on the other side. And I always got the feeling that there was something special here, until one of my good friends, like she came in a few months after I bought my home. She came in, and the first thing she said, she's very, very psychic. She does this like for full-time, her work is a psychic. And she came in, and the first thing she said, oh my God, she said, you're right on the portal. There's a portal and there's a vortex right up the mountain. And after she said that to me, she disappeared. And I said, where are you going? She goes, oh, I just want to go see where your vortex is. She disappeared for a few hours. She's like that. And she came back, and she goes, I went, and she goes, I sat in your vortex. She said, you got this one hell of an energy vortex. She said, it was beautiful. She said, I just disappeared for a couple hours. So, and then I later found out, probably a few months later, from a neighbor of mine who's a Native American. He's an Abenaki. They're part of the tribe that used to live here in this part of southern Quebec. And I had met him he has like a shop where he sells Native American wares a few kilometers from here. And when I walked into the shop, he ended, like, when we first met, he didn't know me. Like, I was looking at his stuff, and we were talking, and he goes, you just moved into near where the portal is. And I looked at him, and I thought he was like from outer space or something. I said, what are you talking about? And he goes, you moved into this region. I said, yeah. And he goes, you're living in a house. I said, how do you know all this? He goes, because I know. So I later found out he was a shaman, an Abenaki shaman. And he told me this, and he said, there's a reason why you're there. He said, I think he was referring the spirits or something like this. He said, they brought you there to be the portal guardian, to protect that portal. He said, it's very sacred to us. So.
Oh my gosh. That's what I was getting to, that you're a portal guardian.
Yeah. I'm here. What he told me is that I anchor to prevent anything negative from coming into this portal. But I mean, over the years, I mean, I've never had an experience that was weird or something. I have had a few small little things there, but I don't know.
Now, are you conscious of doing that now, or is it just one of your subconscious abilities of who you are as a higher being?
I have no idea. I mean, I really have no idea. What am I supposed to be doing? Is it because my energy, am I like a barrier to make sure there's nothing that goes through here that would not be good, or does my energy protect the area? I don't know.
Well, probably both. I mean, I imagine as I discovered more of, who you are and what you're doing, that you are pretty well protected.
Yeah, I've been told
Also,
that.
you're not only a protector
Yeah.
and a guardian, but you're pretty well protected. So, would you feel like sharing that story you shared with me in the pre-talk about
That accident.
Yeah, I thought
Okay.
that was so
And
great. Oh, wait,
funny you say that.
hold on a second, Ileana.
Yeah, Karen,
Yeah.
is there like a blue dragon energy beside that portal? Because I feel like there's a blue dragon energy in the mountain.
The I got chills. I have to calm down. You just made chills go up all over me. I've always, it's strange that you say that. I'm not sure about the dragon, but my friend did mention something about a serpent or a dragon years ago when she first came here. She said she felt a dragon or a serpent energy. I don't remember what, but she said it was good, and she talked about purple light. She's more into the light stuff there. And dragons, like I've always had dragons around me, like I've always been attracted to dragons since I was a little kid. I used to draw dragons for hours and hours. I used to draw dragons all the time.
You know what? As I was looking through your website, you make tiles, and you made, if I'm remembering right, a blue dragon tile, didn't you?
Yeah, like green and blues and
Green and blue and stuff.
Yeah.
What are you
yeah,
getting,
there's a
Ileana?
painting too. I think maybe you saw the wood painting.
Yeah, the wood
blue
one.
dragon. That's probably it. Yeah.
Because I'm getting a blue dragon wrapped around the mountain, like gray mountain, and it's wrapped around. It's the protector of the water, the trees, the land, the air, the purification of everything. And it's also guarding that portal, so nothing that's not supposed to come in doesn't come in. So it's like wrapped around the whole mountain.
Okay. In my being here is like, that's always been a weird question, is why am I here? Is there a reason why I'm here before the portal? I don't know if it's because to protect, I'm like a first barrier or something, if ever there was something, I'm not sure.
Ileana, do you feel like sharing? I know you're highly intuitive.
Yeah, it's protection, and it's to be with that guardian, because it's like your spirit guide in a way.
Okay.
Or your totem animal, what the shamans call it. So it's guarding you, not just the portal. It's protecting you.
It's protecting me too.
Yeah, that's why nothing has come in through that portal that is weird or that can interfere with your life, because it guards the portal. This dragon, Arashal, his name is Arashal. Arashal guards. It's a male dragon.
I'm gonna write that down. Arashal.
Arashal, like ERA.
SHAL.
Yes.
Okay.
Arashal.
Well, thank you for that information. And what you said, Ileana, about it protecting and everything is exactly what that shaman said to me over 20 years ago. He said the same information to me. He didn't mention a dragon, but he did a sign like that, like with his hands.
Because it weaves,
he did that.
It weaves around the mountain, like it almost hugs the mountain. That's what it feels like, what it's doing. That's how it protects
It's
energetically.
funny, I keep getting chills, and when I get that, it's because it's the truth. So I can feel that. And it's kind of strange that you mention that, because not too far away from here, about maybe 45 minutes, there's this huge lake. It's called Lake Memphrey Magog, and it's a long lake, and it goes down into the States a bit. And there's a mountain, there's a small ski mountain. It actually looks just like, it's just a rocky mountain overlooking this lake. And at the very top of that lake, there's an ancient rock that has petroglyphs in it. And the Native Americans said that it was done by the first people. So they were giving us about 20,000 years. But there's a warning on that stone, and it says to beware of the dragon in the lake. And in the lake, since the 16th century, they've had sightings. It's like they call it Memphre. It's like the one out in British Columbia, and it's like the one we have another big lake like that where it's
Loch Ness,
Lake Champlain.
Champlain. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Okanagan, and apparently there's something in that lake. So it's, I don't know if it's related or.
Ileana will get a flash on it.
It's like silver ripples, so like it's almost like there's a portal in the water itself, and it shows you things connected to you and connected to the universe. It's like, but when I was seeing the dragon, I'm like out in Quebec. I'm floating over Quebec psychically because I'm in British Columbia.
Okay.
Near the Ocean Park Crescent Beach area. And I've always been drawn to live near the mountains and the water and the trees as well. So I think it's the Atlantean Lemurian connection that we're all near. So it's just like the water is showing me ripples of time switching, timelines, and the dragons are the portal guardians of the mountains and the water. So it's like a ripple effect of what you can see of your timeline, of your soul frequency, of who you are and what these sacred places are, how they're connected to you.
That sounds really interesting. Thank you for the information. And I'm surprised that you're in the same situation. You're like in a water mountain. I mean, for sure the mountains here aren't like the Rockies, but they are what's left over of an ancient mountain that's been worn down. So it's only the granite cores that are now in the what you see visually there. They're ancient. And in this ancient system, there's a few mountains in Quebec that are not part of the Appalachian. It was once the Champlain Sea. And there's the mountain outcroppings. They're like around Montreal. There's some in the eastern townships. There are mountains that are solitary. And there's one mountain, it's called Mont Saint-Grégoire. And this mountain, since the 16th century, it's always been the place of UFO sightings since the French colonists came here. And on the other side of Montreal, there's a mountain that's the very same. It looks almost the same. All these mountains have lakes on the top, so they must have been ancient volcanoes. We don't know about that. But Mont Saint-Hilaire, the mountain is like a natural reserve now it was bought by McGill University in Montreal. And they have like, you can go up in the mountain, you can walk, you can hike or whatever. But this mountain also has been full of UFO sightings since the 16th century. And if you look on YouTube, you can find a documentary that was made about it several years ago of all the sightings that were, ships were seen, lights. And it's also a mountain. I have the website that there's a part of the mountain that they mine, and they found 8 different crystals and minerals that do not exist anywhere else in the world. And they're all blues. They're all various shades of blue, different crystals, and they've never discovered them anywhere else in the world. And also on that mountain, and I have a picture of it, that there's a part of the mountain on the top. But the thing is that McGill University have cordoned it off so that you cannot go and look at it. There's these stone walls that are they're like flat, but they're made exactly as like the stones that you see in Cusco in Peru. You know, the ones that are like almost if they were heat melded together. Huge stones, and it's not a natural formation. It's like this huge wall. And it's like in the middle of the mountain, and they won't allow anybody to go anymore. So this person got the photos before they shut it off. That's something.
Yeah, Sumerians had been here, Egyptians had been there, Peruvians had been there. So they've migrated. Like it almost sounds like all the ancient civilizations have been near that mountain, and each one carved their own history of cosmic creation and earth creation. So there's several different groups of cultures. So it's an amalgamation what's on the walls. I would be really interested to see those photographs of what this what the person photographed, because if I look closer, there's like little histories, captions of cultures that came and went, even Sumerians, Peruvians. It's interesting, even though Peru is far from Canada, but they all migrated and left their migration histories in this cavern system. And it's tiles, like it's separate tiles. Each culture has its own tiles with its own petroglyphs and glyphs and hieroglyphics in different languages and different vibration of their creation myths, of their stories of how the earth and the cosmos, like it's almost like a cosmological history of events in chronological order. So that's why they cordoned that off, because the true history is revealed in that area of reality of our past and even what's happening in the present.
That's so cool. All the treasures that are hidden everywhere, you know. It's thank you for sharing that for Karen. It's a nice connection.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, you know, it makes us wonder even more that the reason why, like, we're near these areas, you know, I have this knowing inside of me. It's like I know this stuff, but it's not stuff you can tell anybody because they'll send you off to the loony bin or something. So a lot of times you have to keep quiet about it.
Well, here you don't, okay?
Yeah, good.
I got your back, honey. And by the way, I think Archangel Michael has your back too.
Oh, true. And you asked me about that accident there that I had when you were telling me, you know, that I'm protected and everything like that. In 2008, this was in March, and it was a Sunday following 2 days of like a heavy, really bad snowstorm that we had here. And that Sunday I had to go down to town. So I'm like about 8 kilometers from town here. And I have to go down, and the road is like down and it winds. And there was a lot of, even though the snow plows had really cleaned everything well, there was this thick, heavy ice because it was cold. So, you know, the salt doesn't melt the ice completely. So I was leaving, and I was doing probably, I was a little bit, how do you say that? Not distracted. We say it in French, j'étais dans la lune. I was in the moon. I wasn't really thinking. I was just driving, like, you know, on automatic pilot, and I was probably doing about 100 kilometers an hour, and I should have been, and I had like 4 winter tires with studs. But the thing is that I went into a curve. I should have probably went down to 90 kilometers, the speed limit at least. And all of a sudden my back end started to fishtail, and I just let go of the wheel. That was my first, and all I said was, Archangel Michael, please protect me. And my car, 3 cars were coming up towards me. I almost hit the third car. And it's funny because that guy was in this little Honda Civic, and he was looking at me like this. That's why I remember. And I was in a Honda Civic too. And I just flipped right up over him, and I turned twice. And all I remember saying was, Archangel Michael, please make sure I land on my wheels. I don't want to land upside down because the ditches are about 12 feet on either side down. Finally, my car turned. I landed 4 wheels upside, and I'm sitting there looking. And while I was rolling, while the car was turning, I had these little bits of ticket stubs. You know, when you go and you get gas, and they give you, you know, like to win $50 or something off your next gas fill up. They were all raining inside my car. Everything was in slow motion. It was like, I was, oh, this is so pretty. It looks like Christmas. That's what I was thinking. And all of a sudden I landed 12 feet down in the ditch on the 4 wheels, in between 2 hydroelectric poles, just a few feet from the tree line. And I'm sitting there, and I take the wheel, and I go, oh, this is nice. Phew, thank you. And I managed to open up the door because I was a little bit an incline. I started climbing up, and then the guy that I almost hit, he had stopped, and he came, and he said, are you okay? And he said, yeah, I'm fine. The ambulance came. I was perfectly fine. I had nothing, not even a sore neck, nothing. My airbag didn't deploy because nothing hit me. But when I looked at the car afterwards, she was dented all around, not in the front or the back, so the airbags didn't go off. But the top of the car, the side, and the just, I think the pressure from turning and that. But I was well protected because 2 weeks after, there was a woman, she lost control in the same, going down the same area, and she turned over and she was killed on impact. And she was in like a big, massive car. Like she was in a pretty
Wow.
new, like a Cadillac Seville of the year. And I was in my old Honda Civic, and her Cadillac was brand new, but her chair unsoldered from the frame of the car. That's what killed her. So
Yeah, I would say you're protected.
yeah,
Ileana has something to add to that. I can feel it.
Yeah, that area, like where that ice is, it almost feels like the ice are skis and the skis move and the ice shifts. So it's really like it's almost like being on a ski road, and the skids can happen any moment at that ice. And when your cart was lifted, it feels like it was in a silver warp bubble, like in an orb bubble of some sort. Because
yeah.
it was held, it was lifted, held
I
aloft.
I felt something weird. I felt, like you said, I was in the bubble. I felt like I was in the slow motion bubble, and it was Christmas. It was, no, it was so funny. Like I was sitting there laughing. When I got out of the car, I was laughing. I was sitting there going, my God, that was almost fun. But anyways,
Some people go through a lot to get a present.
Yeah, yeah, and like time was slowed and almost
Yeah.
held still, like a flash freeze of time, while
Mhm.
this orb bubble is all around the car, and the car is slowly gliding, held suspended while it's flipping, and slowly gliding to be put in a safe spot. Could you drive the car after that?
It could be driven, but I mean, the tow truck took it. It was actually mainly all body work because the motor hadn't been touched. Everything was fine on the car, but I had just the body work that had to be done, $6,000 worth of body work, but
Yeah,
nothing else on the motor, drive, suspension, nothing.
because it was lifted and slowly glided on the road by the ditch. Like, so even the car it was preserved so you could drive it, because it would have been more expensive to buy a new car than the bodywork itself. That's why the car was preserved, so you would not be in a financial loss. Like, because
Yeah.
Archangel Michael knew at that time financials were important for you.
Very,
6,000 opposed to 42,000 for a brand new car. So that's why the car was preserved,
Yeah.
like internally. It's just external, some external damage.
That's an interesting take on that. I never thought, because it's true. I think at that point, 2008 was the point where I was at the lowest financially. Like it was really bad, and that happened to me, and it was like kind of strange. But you know, it didn't cost me a penny to get, you know, my insurance paid for everything. And the garage not too far that did all the body work, he lent me a car. He didn't charge me anything. He didn't even charge me my deductible or anything. It didn't cost me a penny to fix the car. And I drove it for like, I think easily I drove it for another 9, 10, 11, another 11 years. I drove that car. So it's pretty
I'd
amazing.
call that protection.
Yeah. But when you say all that, Elena, it makes me think that the protection thing, and I'm going back in time, and it's like all these things that have happened to me, it's always been like I've been protected. I mean, there's stuff that happens to me because, you know, I live here alone in my home, so I'll be doing stuff, and then afterwards I say, my God, I could have killed myself doing that. And yet something happened and it didn't happen. Like I didn't fall off the roof.
Well, they're invested in a portal guardian, obviously.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's continue on
Mhm.
to what inspired you to write your current 3-book series, of which folks, you'll see the pictures here, Guardians of the Crystals, and your second one, I don't know how to pronounce it,
Herculobus.
Herculobus, and their
Herculobus.
third one, Amun Ra. So what
Ra.
inspired those?
Well, it's like we were talking about earlier. I felt this, you know, being compelled urge, this for years before I was able to get it out. I mean, I published the first one 2014, but I had been having this urge to write since the mid-90s before I finally got it out. So during all that time, I was gathering all this in my mind, in my head. And then probably I started writing it down in 2012, 2013 is when I started writing it down and finally bringing it all together to bring it to get published. But it's always been working at me, because every time I would watch a history channel or a history show or a documentary and it'd be talking about ancient civilizations, and I'm sitting there and inside of me I was screaming, no, that didn't happen, that is not what happened, there's something else going on. And then I decided to write this. I didn't want to write it like in the form of, like, say, somebody like Graham Hancock, he's writing a book, or Michael Tellinger, or all these great, researchers that are out there. I wanted to put it in a story, instead of like saying this is what happened. Well, I wove a story around it.
So you didn't need to do any previous research on Atlantis or the Syrian civilizations or anything.
Well, I did a little bit of research, not that much. I did the research that I needed to go get. There's certain little things, but most of it came, from within. But probably I used certain guidelines that maybe other people went into, like for the research and that. But a lot of it was more or less like, I don't know, maybe it's channeled information that,
downloads.
yeah, downloads. Exactly.
I noticed you wrote in your book that, quote, the name Crystal Guardian was given to those Atlanteans who carry the genetic marker that allows them to create a symbiotic exchange with the power crystal entities.
Mhm.
So for our audience, I'd like you to start and define what power crystals are and what crystal entities are.
Well, the power crystals are the physical representation of the energy source that the Atlanteans use. They're like these massive crystal mounds, that within these crystal mounds, there's an entity, like a consciousness, that is actually able to bond with human beings that are actually genetically, they have what we call a genetic marker. They're born with it, probably because they were born through countless lives, probably reincarnation. They were probably bonded at the very beginning of time with these crystal entities, and they retain that genetic marker. So what happens is that every few generations, a child would be born that would be able to connect, and it's nothing to do with hereditary. It's just like totally random. So it wasn't like saying a king or a queen because they're a king or a queen. No, it's totally the guy that was sweeping the streets could have had a child, and they were able to telepathically connect with these entities that are housed within these huge crystal structures. So that's what I based it on.
Wow. Ileana, I know you can add to that.
Yeah, definitely. I've always been drawn to the crystals, and I've always felt like I'm a guardian of the crystals and a guardian of universal knowledge and information coming in. So I've had flashbacks of memories creating crystal staffs and wands and creating ascension for beings to go home, because they come on missions here and then they want to go back to their planet of origin. So the crystals, the crystalline center, the green circle, the crystalline energy, and the guardians with their staffs and their wands would gather under the Egyptian Hall of Records, Atlantean Egyptian Hall of Records, because it's both, and they would activate the crystalline circle with their staffs and wands, activate the portal with the staffs and wands, the crystalline frequencies everywhere, and the beings go back home to their planet of origin through the portal.
That's
so
pretty cool.
I
That's
know.
pretty cool, because I think, Merrily, if you remember in my third book, Amun Ra, there's a portal that connects to another planet, and it's the very same thing. There's like a circle of stone, there's power crystals that are there, they connect the worlds together, and it's like Ileana was saying, it's exactly like that, but that's just stuff that came to me when I was, it's not something that I saw or I read somewhere. It's really something that came to me as a download when I was writing, because when I start writing, I can be for hours just sitting there writing, and time just, I don't have any notion of time. And all of a sudden I write all this information, I go over it and I go, oh my God, I don't know where it came from, but all that information about the portal and the connection between the worlds and everything, that's all downloaded stuff.
Yeah. You both write that way a lot, I think, too. Um, Karen, do you know where those power crystals in your story originate from?
Yeah, they originated from the Pleiades. They originated from a few of the stars that were there, like Maya and Era. They say the Pleiades are like 7 stars, but they're actually like 14 stars that are quite visible, not to the naked eye, but visible with telescopes. But they're part of a larger constellation that has even more stars. But they came from those stars, they originated from there. And they also originated from Sirius, from the Sirius star system. So they had 2 star system with these ancient crystals, with these entities that actually bonded with Syrians, and they bonded with the Pleiadian people. So that's where I have the two the characters of my story come from different star systems, but they're also star systems that were really, in the ancient world, they were important too. The star system, the Pleiades, the Orion star system, the Syrian star system. There's several ancient civilizations on the earth that had their origins from those different constellations.
Yes. So do you think that the Atlanteans were actually galactic humans who came from the Pleiades, and also maybe descendants from the Mayans also?
Yeah, well, I always went more along that the Atlanteans for me were actually the Mayans that came along later were the descendants of the Atlanteans. That's what
Mm.
for me, it's what I felt was like there. Maybe not everybody thinks the same way, but in my storyline, it's like that.
So do you feel you have a strong past parallel Mayan lifetime or
Yeah,
any?
yeah, I do. I've had flashes, like I said, like flashes. Um, it's like I remember this one flash I had years ago, probably 2000, early 2000. I was just like, it was a nice summer day like this, and I don't remember what I was doing, probably something, I was doing housework or something, and all of a sudden I had this flash, and it lasted like a few seconds where I saw myself. I was all dressed like in white, and I had this jewelry, and I was on top of a pyramid, a step pyramid, but with a flat top, and I was overlooking all the landscape. Like I could see a few mountains, but it right away in my head I said, "Oh, I'm atop a Mayan pyramid." But I mean, it could have been like in somewheres in Central America, or it could have been in the Yucatan. But I knew it was a Mayan pyramid.
Mm-hmm. Now, you also told me a memory of rescuing children from a huge cataclysm.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, that's a dream, a reoccurring dream that I've had for years now. I have it like a few times a year. It's always the same dream. I dream that like I'm rescuing children, and it looks modern. It looks like it's the buildings and everything. They look exactly like our buildings. It looks the same. There's streets, there's cars, there's shops. And the only difference is that when I look up in the sky, I see 2 suns. So I see like our regular sun, and I see a sun that's more like of a purplish color. And in the sky, I can see these ships. They're not airplanes. They're ships. They're not like round or saucers. They're just these weird ships, and they're firing on us like it's like lasers. They're firing, and I have like a bunch of children. I'm running, trying to keep them safe. and then it always ends that I'm underneath the awning of the shop with all the kids around me, and then it ends there. I've had that dream for years.
Wow. Now, Ileana I'm showing here on the screen a picture she sent me of what she felt was you as a Mayan princess that people, or priestess, I should say. And Ileana, do you want to mention anything about that?
Yes, I saw like the facial features because I saw a picture of you when you were younger. It's like brown hair and in a white gown, or I should say like a robe gown, between a robe and a gown, and the jewelry, like the golden jewelry. And definitely the Mayans wore white. The priestesses wore a lot of white robes and gowns. So for me, it's like, that's Karen Martel. That's her. That's her past life. And I felt like there was wind when you were standing with the children. There's like blowing wind, and the lasers shooting, they could have been reptilians, because reptilians had invaded Atlantis. So it felt like reptilian energy firing. And for me, it's like, wow, they were white, and the purity of rescuing the children. And it looked very modern. So
Yeah,
it looked,
yeah, exactly.
it could have been a white gown that anybody now wears. It's not like it's so ancient that the clothing is so different, because the Mayans had simplicity in their clothing, like white robes, white gowns, tunics. So it wasn't anything. They could even walk on the street now and you would think it's a yoga meditation owner of a yoga studio, because they're dressed in that yoga meditation style. That's what it felt like. So, because some of them wore tunics and pants, like white, some of them wore robes and gowns. And it also reminded me of Grecians, the Grecian, the garbing, like how it drapes, like the Grecian gowns.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that. It's true what you're saying. It reminds me of the Grecian robe, the way like the way I saw myself there. Yeah. So that's interesting.
Everyone's watching a live connection of reading and everyone helping one another to regain their memories and cross-check things. Ileana, I remember you had researched and found out that the Mayans had come from
The Pleiades. The Mayans had
and from the island of ATL,
Alt or Atlan.
which is Atlantis, right?
Yes, it's an adjunct, like the biggest island of Atlantis. There were smaller islands that separated, because Atlantis had several epochs. So this was like 11,000 years ago.
Isn't that cool?
I know.
You're getting pieces of the puzzle fit together, Karen. And thank you, Ileana. That's very generous of you.
It's nice. Yeah, it's nice to hear that, like a confirmation from somebody else, you know?
Yeah.
It was something that I randomly came across when I was doing research on like Alt Atlan. It sounds very familiar. And the Pleiadians and the Andromedans had a space station called Atlan in Earth orbit before it was destroyed by the lasers and the fire. So Atlan, that word Alt, Atlan, Atlan seems to be a connector.
Okay.
And then, of course, the Mayans have a secret space program, and they're often protectors, even in current time. Quote, current time. Okay, let's get more into the importance of these the guardians of the crystals, and what crystals actually do. And I would like to share a one-page quote by another guardian who we highly respect, called Lisa Renee. And I'm going to quote this so I get this accurate, because it's a great explanation and the impact and how important the crystals really are. It's not just, oh, great, crystals, I'll go play with it. It has to do with everyone's life on this planet. So, quote, it is called keepers of the crystal core. Quote, the consciousness units and rays of the next universe and the light beings that live there are called aurora families. These families build aurora platforms that are safe zones that bypass the false frequency fence and false matrix around Earth. The aurora platforms allow access into the passageway that leads to the Ascension Earth in Andromeda. This is called the Aquelle, A-Q-U-E-L-L-E matrix that transmits the Divine Mother's aqua color ray codes into the Earth crystal caverns. The Aquelle genetic lines came to the Earth through Sirius B portal and have remained on Earth as the natural keepers of the Earth's crystal core. The core crystal structure of a planetary body is the most critical part of the foundation of matter. It instructs how the consciousness energies are brought into manifest bodies and instructs the blueprint in the types of forms that exist on a planet like Earth and impacts the perception we have of reality. The crystal core acts as a transducer of non-physical energy running in the planet, from which its magnetism condenses into new elements we call physical matter. She continues, quote, this changes everything, including interconnecting with the underground crystal caverns that hold information about the hidden timeline histories of Earth, 3D Earth, 4D Tara, and 5D Gaia. Essentially, we are in a phase, good news, of receiving more positive energy and benevolent technology that is designed to support human ascension and planetary liberation. The planetary caverns, and I'm putting up pictures here of caverns found in Mexico of these tree-sized shaped crystals. The planetary crystal caverns were used as internal power generators and for data memory storage for the planet's brain. Ultimately, these clusters are remnants of what's left of crystals that were misused in the Atlantean time cycle. They were exploded, and this created a large cataclysm on the surface of Earth. Selenite, also referred to as gypsum rods, are specifically used and programmed like large computer chips. They hold a tremendous amount of information about the planet and data about the contents of the planetary brain. Unfortunately, they are still used, have been kind of altered to still use false programs to the planet brain and human mind collective soul matrix. These huge crystals you are looking at now that are full of pre-programmed data send impulses of electromagnetic information to the planetary field and functions like the unconscious mind of the planet. Sirius A Anus are famous for abuse of mind control and crystal programming. These crystals contain much data about our ET civilizations and their hidden histories in relationship to Earth, end quote. So, either one of you have anything to say to that? And these giant pictures of crystals that are in front of you.
Well, it reminds me of the mountain Karen was talking about, where McGill University cordoned that off because it's similar. The carvings on the walls of these civilizations, Sumerians, because Sumerians are linked to the Anu, an Inca or Anunnaki, they left behind carvings and things like that. So I feel like ancient technology is in that cavern system. What Lisa describes, I don't feel like there's tons of crystals there, but I feel there's something connected to water devices. So I would say that mountain is an example of that, of what the hidden technology is.
And that, folks, is a human being.
Yeah.
Right here. So you get to see the size.
Those crystals are huge. Those are, well, it's like Ileana was saying, there's water because those are selenite crystals, and selenite crystals form like that from water. So there's probably, I don't remember what the water activity was in that place. I do know that apparently when they go into there, they can't stay for more than a few minutes because the heat is extreme. It's like 140 degrees
And
Fahrenheit.
humidity is 100.
Yeah, and the humidity is like really terrible. And they grow very, very rapidly, those crystals too. That's why they get so big. But beneath all that, it's like there's a reason why those crystals are there. And like in that article, they're part of a crystal network that anchor, you know, like all this technology, like you were saying about the 4D and the 5D. There's one thing I know, maybe Ileana can maybe confirm about this. Years ago, I had somebody tell me, a Native American, I think it was an article that I saw, and I discussed it with somebody, and a Native American in our region was telling me that every time we mine crystals out of the earth, you know, like there's a lot of times you'll see it on social media, you know, these places that I think in Brazil or in India where they mine these huge mountain loads of rose quartz. You must have seen those. Or any other type of crystal that are mass mined in Madagascar and Brazil and India and China. Even in British Columbia, all the mining of the jasper that goes on, that's taken out of the earth, that every time, this Native American told me that every time we do that, we are disturbing the interlocking network grid work of the earth. Every time you take a crystal out of the earth, you are changing the eternal structure of the earth, the energy that goes along the grid networks. And the more we do that, it's not good. That's what I was told. I don't know what Ileana would have to say about that.
I'd like to add, that's a very important point and very sad, but there also are people and guests I've had on the show that are advanced crystal grid healers and clearing, and they'll use crystals to replace it, so to reconnect the ley lines, the magnetic lines that connect all of this. Go ahead, Ileana.
So the crystal gritters, they're fixing the surface damage of the mining, but they're not fixing the crystal core. When they're doing the mining, it shakes the crystalline networks inside the caverns and at the core. What Lisa Renee is talking about, the crystalline core, that is the core of the planet. Because it's not all magma and lava, it is crystalline. Most of it is crystalline. So when they do that mining, it shakes the core. And it's like fractures, little fissures and fractures start happening. That's why we're getting these massive earthquakes in places. It's just like drilling for oil, fracking. Yeah. Similar, but they're mining for, they're shaking the crystals. Another word for fracking is shaking the crystalline core. It shakes it, and it disturbs the balance of it, the frequency, the solid crystalline essence of it. That's why when the crystal healers are doing the gridding, they heal the surface of what was mined, but the inner core, it's like they don't go completely to the core. So they need to go deeper because that shaking and that fracturing needs to be healed. That's what I'm seeing still as a problem today.
Beautifully said. I agree with that. I agree with that. Okay, so let's get into the connections of the crystals, the pyramid, Atlantean. So Karen, do you know how the Atlantean and Syrian pyramids were built in ancient Egypt?
Well, like I mentioned, the information I give out is like in my books, is what I strongly believe. Like I've worked with engineers for years, and I've always been mechanically like inclined. So whenever I used to see like temples or structures or whatever, I didn't see anything about it being used for burials or for, I don't know, for worshiping gods or stuff like that. I always saw everything from a mechanical point of view. So the way I described it in my books is that the pyramids were built by big machines. They were sculpted by huge stone cut machines, what we would call today CNC computer numerically controlled machines that work on several axes, that cut stone, they cut metal. So the way I explain it is that the pyramids were built using sophisticated machinery, because when I did the research that I needed about this, even today, if you go to the Giza Plateau or you go to anywhere in the ancient civilizations, whether it be the Mayans or the Incas, and tool marks can still be seen on the stone. And tool marks are caused not by chisels, they're caused by high RPM machines rotating 5,000 times a minute, cutting into stone. And parts of like the Giza Plateau, the part of they're made of basalt rock. When some of it was broken apart, and the part that wasn't exposed to the atmosphere and not worn down on the sides, they could see the tool marks that they're equivalent to machines that we do today when we cut stone. So my theory, or what I feel, is that all these ancient structures were built with machines. They were put into place by machines. They were all done by highly sophisticated technology. It's as simple as that. That's the way I see it.
Okay, that involve laser. And you may be surprised to know Ileana was I'm going to let you tell how you're connected to building pyramids.
Yeah, 100,000 years ago, I was a Egyptian priest / architect named Calypso. That is a Grecian name, but he was named Calypso for short. I think it does connect to Egypt as well, because the Greeks were connected to Egypt. This was 100,000 years ago. So he built the Sphinx and he built the Giza Plateau pyramids later on. And they had portable laser machines that they could set up, and it would cut the stones. And then they had ships that could lift the stones and place them in symmetrical geo-placed location, because it has to align with the stars. They also had portable levitation devices like a wand or a staff that they can, with thought consciousness, connect to it psychically, program it to place the stones even more accurately than the ships or the laser cutting machines. So they worked in connection with levitation and sound and frequency with these powerful lasers and machines for precision guidance, precision cutting of the stones. Even our modern technology does not go perfect where it's so seamless. There's no seam. Like in these pyramids, there's no seams.
No.
Machu Picchu, Gobekli Tepe, Pumapunku, no seams, because they could cut the stone so perfectly. And there was no slaves getting the stones from the quarries and dragging it on stilts or with animals. No such thing. The pyramids were not made by slaves. The Egyptian pyramids were not made by slaves. It was made by these advanced Galactic human Mayans, Atlanteans, and the Syrians. That's who made the pyramids. And today, nobody can prove that stilts were used or pulling levees or anything. They can't prove that. They've tried to simulate it, but they can't.
Yeah.
It just falls apart. The rollers, the wooden rollers or the metal rollers just fall apart because we don't have that levitation laser technology quite yet to that precision where you could just go in a lab and huge basalt stones can be stacked. Even in Antarctica, they discovered there was 2 Navy guys, Spartan 1 and Spartan 2, that they talked about there's being basalt, black green rock basalt, some kind of a huge 20-30 acre structure with these weird markings inside of something with the sun circle or something like that, with Linda Moulton Howe, that the ancient Atlanteans left this millions of years ago with technology, green glowing walls inside, crystalline things, and holographic technology with crystals in Antarctica. And I had seen some of those Atlantean outposts still there. green, blue, and it's made of crystalline kind of technology. So it's also in Antarctica, not just in Egypt.
And it's like Antarctica, for me, I think, is the point where the Atlanteans were building their civilization. Like I have in my books, is that they originated from Antarctica, and there was an earth shift, a crustal displacement that happened just like that, that made the continent slip downwards to the South Pole where it is now, and everything is like flash frozen. It's a bit like in the Arctic when they found mammoths that were flash frozen and they still had food in their mouth. They were chewing their food. So something like that happens so quickly. And even geologists, they've confirmed that if something like that happens, it's like so quick, so instantaneous that we'll be thrown into the same type of situation. You know, it's not a matter of if, it's more a matter of when, you know, like when a pole reversal, you know, we're about to go through a pole reversal. So that's probably something that will probably happen in the near future, what I think.
Yeah, and that flash freezing preserved all those buildings under the ice, so they weren't destroyed. That those Atlantean outposts are still there in remote areas under the ice. They weren't totally destroyed, and they had portal systems. They had shipbuilding facilities with what is called the World Ark ships that can house thousands of people on it, and you can move in them. You can move to different places and repopulate.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I wrote in my book. I think Merrily probably knows that I wrote about them leaving in ships. They were leaving because the continent Antarctica had displaced, and it was going towards the South Pole, and it was going underwater, and it was like flash freezing. It was winter, it was storming, and it was all happened very, very quickly. And that was all downloaded information. I didn't read about that anywhere. That's stuff that just came to me when I was writing, that the people were leaving in these huge ships that had thousands of people that were leaving the Antarctic continent.
That's what I have from a past life too. And it was warm because Antarctica was tropical. And when this pole shift happened, and when the catastrophe with the crystalline towers going overloading happened, it went from warm to cold and gray and ashy. And there's like acid rain, all kinds of hail, all kinds of storm wind. So it's just like quick because they destabilized the crystalline technologies. That was part of why Atlantis fell in Antarctica.
And those crystalline technologies also were connected to the core too. I know one of the destructions, it went all the way to the core, right? Which is the crystals in the core, supposedly. Have you heard something about that?
Are you talking to me or Ileana?
Either one. Either one.
I wasn't sure. Well, me in my books, I don't really go into it that much because I start off the first book with Atlantis going under like that on the Antarctica continent. I play more upon that the crystalline technology wasn't really connected to what happened, that catalysm. It's more or less a natural disaster. It's just, but I didn't go into putting the two together like that. I had it as separate, like it was a natural disaster. The earth went through something, a crustal displacements. I didn't really go into that.
Okay.
And I didn't really attach the two together, because for me, the crystalline technology, the power crystals actually came from another star system and were brought to Earth. So I didn't really go towards that area.
That makes sense. Well, there's also multiple eras of Atlantis too.
Yeah.
Ileana.
Some of the crystalline towers were misused, and it contributed to that natural catastrophe. So, and then those crystals were taken away by the Atlanteans and the Syrians and put in inner Earth for safekeeping by those guardians, so they're not misused again on the surface of the planet today, because that is technology that could be used for healing and reversing the aging process and for healing the planet, for keeping everything clean of pollution, but it also can be reversed in the frequency, like making these black crystal towers, because they're blue and purple. They can be made into black obelisks or red crystals. Atlanteans had also misused red crystals and they created all kinds of physical health issues in one of the epochs when it was infiltrated by the reptilians and the Anunnaki, Anunnaki. And so there was Syrians, Egyptians, the Saras beings, the guardians, trying to balance all that out. And so it was decided that the crystalline technology would either be portal off-world to return to the Pleiades, or go into inner Earth for safekeeping until we were ready to be a civilized surface civilization again. Then the crystals will be returned for us to help us when the timing is correct, when we're evolved enough not to misuse the technology again. So it's partially connected to destabilizing Atlantis with Antarctica too. So it's like that crystalline technology should never be misused. Any crystalline technology should never be misused.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarity. How are the crystals able to strengthen the grid system of the pyramids? Do you know, Karen, first?
Well, if I'm talking about my book, like for me it was like an energy. The power crystals were an energy source in my book, so they were an energy source, but like they connected through pyramids. So it was like a grid system, a bit like we have like our electrical grid system. Well, the power crystals were housed in pyramids that served as generators for putting out like power and electricity through a grid system that would service like the localities, the cities and everything that was connected. And they were also used, the power crystals were actually used as separate crystals and placed into ships, serving as a crystal drive that would make the Atlantean ships actually traverse like through a wormhole to get to another part of the solar system or the galaxy. So they weren't using like I had another civilization in my books that are called the Osiris, which are actually more of more like of a Warren people, a Warren civilization, but they didn't have the crystalline technology. So they relied on like nuclear fission. They relied on ion drives for to power their spaceships and their machinery, their weapons. And the Atlanteans, being more advanced with the crystalline energy, were able to fold time and space to travel. While the Osiris, if they took off, it would take them months to reach a destination because they were using a regular drive to go through space. So the crystalline technology was used, everything requiring energy to power either ships or power everyday life like we use electricity. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you're smiling away, Ileana, so I know. I'll go, your turn.
Yeah, I remember from the past lifetime as the geneticist in Atlantis, and it was mid like 30,000 years ago or 40,000 years ago. They used crystals in their spaceships and in their portal technology so they could travel anywhere they wanted through portal wormholes, black holes, white holes. It mixes together and creates a stable portal energy with a crystalline frequency. So you don't need FTL drives or hyperspace drives. You don't need plasma. The crystalline technology powers that, and it's in the cells. The crystalline energy is inside nacelles, and it's within the ship, so it's stable. The frequencies don't vibrate the wrong way because crystals can go from solid to liquid to semi-liquid flow and back to solid state. because they figured out how to connect the energy frequencies of these crystals to use it that way. And I remember the Egyptian pyramids underneath had crystalline obelisks that were like power generator sources to create electricity for everything, and connected to the ley lines amplified that. So these obelisks, crystalline obelisks, were underground in the generators and on the surface. So it created a whole grid system. And I have a drawing of this. And they had Syrian ships and Atlantean ships working together. So to help the Syrians figure out how the crystalline technology works to even make it more efficient to power these pyramids as power generators and sources of energy and frequency.
Pyramids, of course, we know are used for multi-purposes, as you explained. But one I've never heard talked about is, of course, they did say that the pyramids helped teleport people into spacecraft. I'd never heard that before. They also said that they were used in terraforming. And folks, by the way, terraforming means transforming and preparing a planet or an asteroid or a habitat to sustain life. So, who wants to go first on that one? Karen, you know anything?
Yeah, well, for the pyramids, even today, I mean, there's several, like I think there's one I read like years ago, the Russian scientists, I think they built a couple of these small scale pyramids in Russia, and they realized that by setting up sensitive equipment within, they made like several levels within the pyramids. They discovered that the energy, the magnetic field of the pyramids create a sort of like almost like an artificial atmosphere around the pyramids that allow plants to grow, that allow plants that have been affected by radiation to become free of radiation, purify water. They found all these benefits from the pyramids, from these artificial pyramids that have been built. And even I think I remember reading about it. I mean, you can even build your own little simple pyramid, you know, just out of like copper piping or tubing or whatever, and put that like in a room over your bed or whatever like that. And it seems that it concentrates a sort of like energy that can help heal a body or heal a plant life or animals or whatever. And I was watching the program, it wasn't that long ago, they were talking about this pyramid. I think it was, I can't remember, it was Russia or whatever. And they were doing tests, and they also found out that within the pyramid itself, there were levels of the pyramid that were not, the energy was not beneficial to the human body. And other parts of the pyramid were good. So they would put up these sensitive machines to read the magnetic field and the output of the energy. So even within the pyramid itself, it doesn't mean that it's all good. There's some parts that weren't and some parts that are.
Fascinating. Ileana, what can you add to that?
So pyramids in the time of Atlantis, Atlantean Egyptian time, like 100,000 years ago, the pyramids had these golden tops on them. And that would create a frequency from the obelisks and the generators, the crystalline energy, and it could fire a beam to the ships that were above to re-energize some of the crystalline nacelle cores, or allow the ship to go through a portal. So they were using the pyramids as generator frequencies. And what Karen said, that you could build your own pyramid, I did a little experiment about 4 years ago. I got wooden dowels because I'm allergic to plastic, so I can't use plastic tubing or anything, and it's unhealthy. It's hard to recycle plastic. So I got wooden dowels because you could take those anywhere with you. I'm trained as a Native American shaman, so the wooden dowels can be reused, and you get special string, like you just buy string, a wad of string, and you can, as long as you place it geometrically in that triangle shape in the bottom, it will be the perfect pyramid. The Giza Plateau, you got to have your edges together correctly. I built it, and I put it in the middle of my meditation room with all the crystals. And my mom would go and sit in it. She's like, I'm going in a portal somewhere. I feel a portal opening. I feel healing energy from a portal. My mom would sit in it and she's like, I'm spinning. The energy's so magnetized here. She's psychic, so she could feel it. And my cat would go in and she's like, meow, meow, meow. Like she's feeling the spin of the portal frequency. And I would put crystals in food and water, and I would see the water molecules, all that pollution from the chlorine of the water evaporating.
Oh, cool.
And I see the bubbles, clean bubbles forming. So
Wow.
there is an energetic frequency in these pyramids, but you gotta be careful. When you create a pyramid, it's a portal frequency, literally, so it can take you to places. It could have unintended consequences if you don't know how to work with a portal, because it's a natural portal. You're not doing anything. You just put up that triangle on the bottom and the top. If you do it correctly, it's a natural portal system. I have a friend, Patricia Mona. She used copper wire to twist around selenite wands on the pyramid, and she glued some other crystals on. So hers is like, you can buy it for a couple of $100 on Amazon, the copper pyramid, where you know the copper rods, you put it together. Then you can buy selenite crystals, and you can buy copper and start wrapping it, wire wrapping around the other copper coils or gluing it. She did both, and it's in her meditation center, healing center. She sits within it all the time and talks and meditates and broadcasts live from the pyramid and rents it out for a couple of hours for everybody to go and meditate in and feel those positive energies. So it's amazing what you can do with crystals and the pyramid
combined together, which the show's about. I know it stops food from spoiling, all kinds of different things. So thank you for that. Also, I am interested in the regenerative healing modalities. So, Karen, did the Atlanteans have the ability to heal from diseases, reversing the aging process? And was this done with crystals or crystalline technology that you know about?
Yes, because in my books, I have what I call the elders that were in the Atlantean society. And some of these elders were healers, and they worked uniquely with crystals. So what would happen is that somebody who wasn't feeling right or whatever, they would go into one of the temples that was like, it wasn't part of the pyramid. It would be like a different structure, like an ordinary like temple filled with water fountains and crystals. And the healer would activate, more or less enter into meditation with these beautiful blue crystals that they would use to heal people or to help people. Like I have a bit of my story, like the main character, when she needed some more or less like mental, she was going through a lot of mental issues, so she would go to the healer, and the healer would help her, put her in a relaxed state and use crystals to balance her body. So that's what I would see the crystals for. However, what I drew from at that point was, I remember like I was watching a lot of the information given out by the doctor Ileana. I'm sure you must have heard of him, the Dr. Sam Osmavagic. He's the one that discovered the Bosnian pyramids in Bosnia. And I still follow a lot of his work. I got some of his literature, and I was watching his documentaries when he was in the Bosnian pyramid. And when I first heard about that and I started listening to him, all the information I was getting this extra information that was coming in. And it's a bit like he was saying, like when he was measuring the magnetic fields, the pyramids, they're covered, they're so ancient. I think they're like maybe 20, 30, 40,000 years old. And they were probably covered by a lot of earth in like earth changes and covered the pyramids, and that's why they're all covered in earth, and they've been excavating them for the last, what, 15 years or so. They're still excavating them, and he discovered like these tunnels that went down beneath the pyramids. And in one of the larger pyramids, there was like a river that was running beneath it. And he discovered this huge stone, like an oval shaped stone, a crystalline stone. And when they were in that cavern, they noticed that all their machinery, their magnetic field detectors, they're all going off the energy that was within those chambers. And the people that were there, he said, I can't remember the details. There was like this one person who was really, really sick, that was part of the technology team. And when he left the pyramid, whatever he had disappeared. So they started, even to this day, I think you can go down there, and the energy that you feel in your body. And what he thinks is that they were used mainly for healing thousands and thousands of years ago. And they're much older than the Egyptian pyramids. So I don't know, Ileana, what you think about those pyramids.
Well, I remember during Atlantis, when I was the geneticist, I also would do experiments with crystals, and I would go into the crystalline healing temples. They were called healing temples, and there were crystalline tables. There was like the crystalline table was made out of a crystal itself, green, blue. There was crystals and holders around it, so a person can lie down on it, and the fields would activate and start healing you. And the crystalline healer is standing there and measuring the frequencies of how the healing is done on the crystal table. So I think maybe in these Bosnian pyramids, that's crystalline table slab might be a remnant of that technology potentially.
Yeah, that sounds
Echoes ding. Now, well, maybe not obviously. Karen, did the Atlanteans have any advanced psychic or telepathic abilities? And if yes, do you know how they worked with those abilities or developed them?
Yeah, what I wrote about is that in my books, the Atlanteans were born psychic. They're well, not psychic. They had telepathic abilities. Not that they were psychic, they were telepathic. They could actually communicate. All the Atlanteans were born like that. They could communicate telepathically, but they still had a very, like, what would I call, they had like rules around that. You weren't allowed to go into somebody else's thoughts and peer and see what they were doing. Everything was like, we communicate, but it would always be like, okay, you communicate with me, but you don't communicate, like without my knowing or anything like that. They were very telepathic. And also in the third book, when we meet the Syrians, they're also a telepathic civilization, and they both came from star systems where the power crystals originated. And then we meet the Osiran, who were like the warrior race that came from the Orion constellation that came to Earth. They had been on Earth for thousands of years, but they had nothing of that nature. They were strictly anchored in 3D. Everything was like mechanical, machinery, anything with mind technology. They had nothing of that. But when I wrote the books, I based the Osiran mainly on the Anunnaki. I based a lot of the technology and everything. I based it really strongly on the Anunnaki and about their gold mining. And my second book, Herculobus, it's actually about that planet that they were on, that came through the solar system every so many thousand of years, and the gold that they were mining. I was bringing all this together from the Anunnaki and the Sumerian civilizations.
Yeah, it's a fascinating book. Now, you have to pronounce it for me.
Herculobus.
Like Hercules. Herculobus.
Yeah.
Herculobus.
is not the same as Nibiru.
I
Or
based
it
it
is.
on Nibiru. I
Okay.
based it on Nibiru, yeah. Because Nibiru actually has several other names, Herculobus being one of them. It's not as widely known, but it was one of the names that they used to call that that planet that the Anunnaki came from. So, you know, there's like
Oh,
a
okay.
big story behind what happened that I have in the other in the books there, in this, especially in the second book there. There's more of a background on how that came to be and why they were on that planet, why they were using Earth, mining gold, but they were also a warring people, so they had many factions amongst their own people. So like the bad guys, the good guys,
Yeah. What else is new?
I have a fourth book. It's almost finished, but it's a book that's that how can I say that? It's like a prequel. It's a book that I wrote that has a little bit of book one, book two, and book three, and it brings together three of the main characters. And I just give like a few chapters, and then you have to continue like by reading the first book, and then the second part is the second book. So I have that fourth book. It's almost finished. It's not a very long book. It's like more like a novella type. But the fifth book, I already have an outline for it. And the fifth book actually starts off where the third book ends. Like when you see that the war is coming, like a little bit more into time. But I'm going to be probably starting to skip with longer time periods, because I remember you were asking me about Amun-Ra and how he's related, or is he the same Amun-Ra that we see in Egyptian civilization. I'm going to be developing that a little bit more, and like what Ileana was saying about you know, the crystals and how they're protected, and how now they're hidden away until we're ready one day to, well, my fifth book is going to touch a bit on that, because eventually those crystals will have to be taken out of circulation to protect the earth and have them be put away. So that's all going to be going on in the fifth book that I'm writing. I haven't started writing it yet. The ideas are there. I have like an outline, but I haven't gotten the proper download to get down and start it.
So folks, just a little extra information here. One of her major sexy characters with wings is in her books. And that's all I'm gonna say. I looked at him and went, yeah.
I do write something spicy, but I don't have any like,
Yes.
it's nothing
Yeah,
pornographic.
it's still
or
pretty
anything
G
like,
rated. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's something
Yeah.
that, you know, even young adults can easily read, because I don't, you know, I'm not one to go into I really don't go for the books that have all this like,
No.
you know,
Yeah.
sexual stuff going on. This is more like romanticized, you know, it's more like what I call old type romance, you know. I mean, I don't go into any details or stuff like that. So, you know, it's
But you
just,
do emphasize, and we're not going to give any of this away, you do emphasize spiritual sex also,
yeah,
a spiritual
yeah,
connection, which is sadly missing on this planet.
yeah, exactly.
So, folks, one of her characters is Amun-Ra, and here's a picture right here, so you can see. And no, he's not single. No, I'm kidding. And so I, of course, you know, being a researcher, I looked up Amun-Ra or Amen, who rose to prominence later in Thebes in the New Kingdom. His name Amun means invisible or hidden god, mysterious of form. And unlike other Egyptian gods, he was considered Lord of all, who encompassed every aspect of creation. Not only that, but evidently he ushered in the first monotheistic religious movement in Egypt under Pharaoh Akhenaten, who was establishing the one true God, Aten. So following Amun's ascendancy during the New Kingdom, he was hailed as the self-created one and king God, who had created all things, including himself, associated with the sun god Ra. So that's what I was asking her is, if these are similar or related. And I'm also very aware that often these are just titles. They're not specific, you know, Amun and Ra are not always individuals. So that's what she was answering to. Go ahead, Ileana.
It's a question for Karen. Is Amon Ra, the character in your book, is he part Syrian and part Anunnaki? Like, who is he of a species in the book?
He's Syrian. He's pure Syrian. He actually comes from the constellation of Sirius, from the double suns. He comes from that planet. He originates from that planet. So when he came to Earth, he became an immortal portal guardian, because their planet, his planet of origin, was a planet that was in orbit around one of the two Syrian suns. And that planet actually was destroyed by the sun itself. So what happened is that they came to Earth and they set up a civilization on Earth. And eventually what they did is that they created like a mirror image of their planet that was destroyed, but in an alternate dimension that was only accessible through a portal that was created by the power crystals. So the thing is that for that world to be protected, because it was held into place, into another dimension by the power crystals itself. So if anything ever happened to the power crystals, that whole planet or alternate universe would disappear. So he was made immortal, but stayed on Earth to protect the portal from anybody ever accessing that other dimension. So he was put like into a state of suspended animation until something would come along and wake him up, which means somebody actually got into that hidden chamber that would lead the portal to the alternate universe that his people were still living in.
Which is also happening now with many of the, actually a Celtic king, they saying is an Anunnaki who wasn't, he's a Celtic king, long red hair, and other giants and different beings waking up in stasis chambers is also happening right now on the planet. Now, Karen, do you know how he became an immortal and an eternal being?
Yeah, I actually have all the process in my book.
And your new one?
I'll just say it at large, because I don't want to give too many details, because there's like a big section on that in the third book. What happens is that there's a ceremony that's done that's in connection with the power crystals. He has to die in his real physical body, and he is more or less, I'll just say it in a way that'll be easier for me to get it across. He's more or less attached. It's like a ceremony that he has these crystal elders around him. He is what happens is that he dies, but the crystals are actually, he's within a crystalline power crystal chamber, and he is brought back to life by the power crystals. And when he is brought back to life, at that moment, he becomes immortal. He becomes a part of the crystals themselves, but he still retains his human form, and he is gifted with a gift or a certain power, a bit like a superpower. And in his case, he was given wings. So what I'm doing is I'm more or less setting a base, like for, you know, when we talk a lot about all different religions, they talk about angels, you know, the winged beings, they talk about the immortal beings. I'm more or less bringing this all into Amun Ra's character. I'm also setting them up for that ancient history timeline of ancient Egypt when he was considered a god. But that's going to be going into the next book. We're going to start seeing that.
How fun is that? In a book I read, Anna, grandmother of Jesus, is on a scene. They had something called the rite of sepulcher. And it was the same thing. They would be put in a sarcophagus and they would have to like go through this process and actually be reborn.
Yeah, a bit like what we see and when Jesus rose from from the dead, you know, and I think he was like 3 days in that cave or something before he walked out. So I don't remember my
Generation, yeah.
Bible there, but there's a lot of ancient civilizations that do talk about the same situation happening, you know, with a god.
Yeah, so Inner Earth, I had an experience. It's in this lifetime. I went to Inner Earth, and there was this crystal room or cavern, healing room. There was this huge clear crystal with a bit of blue translucence, and I touched it, and I ended up inside it. And when I was inside of it, my soul consciousness saw the whole universe and saw the history of how our universe was created. Yes, there's many other universes, but it showed me the history of this universe. And I felt my whole soul consciousness being anchored in a state of healing, everything in perfect balance, omnipotence, being everywhere and being here through this crystalline frequency. And I felt like I was being rebirthed. It was like a rejuvenation of the body and the mind as a whole, and a grounding and a balancing. Then when I left it after a couple of hours, it became solid again. So it was semi-translucent, semi-flow fluidic state, I would say. When I went into it, when I came out, it became solid again. Clear, translucent, but solid. So there are these types of crystals and sarcophagi that can literally tether your soul consciousness to, like when you're inside of it, it's not taking your or stealing your soul consciousness. It's just tethering it to the crystalline technology for you to interact with it. And you feel like you're being rejuvenated or reborn, or you die and gain immortality through it. That happens in Inner Earth, Telos, under Mount Shasta. Like that place is real. Because
it's strange though, because when you're saying all this, Ileana, and I'm sitting there and I'm going, okay, I wrote about that all in my books, and it's all stuff that I got as a download. It's, you know, so it's like it's for me, it's confirming that I'm not the only one that has this information come to me, and I have you confirm everything at the same time. You know, it's like it's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, and the Telosians are remnants of the Atlanteans. When the fall happened, they moved under Telos, under Mount Shasta, and created Telos. And they're the guardians of the crystalline technology that had to go to Inner Earth until we're ready. So they're Atlanteans in a sense. They're part Lemurian in a sense, because they watched what happened and they went underground and created their own cities. And they're like 4 or 5D. So going there, I was transported through a portal. I went there and I was interested in their libraries, the Pagalthos library, the crystalline towers, the crystalline healing chambers. So it's like, for me, it's like Atlanteans are still here and Lemurians are still here, pockets of Inner Earth. It is hollow, and there's systems there, and they have their own sun. Crystals power their cities. Crystalline technology. So that vibrated and resonated with me from what I read in your books, Karen. Similar type of a society.
That's so cool.
It's so delightful to do a roundtable like this, and in a kind of organic way, because you know, those of us that are wanting to spread wisdom it helps to have verification, validation by others with no pre-planned you know, thing. And it's really fun to see the organic, like, wow, that's exactly what I got. Oh, that's the same as you. And stuff is very, very validating, you know.
And Karen, you had visited Chichen Itza in Mexico. What was that experience like for you?
Well, that was pretty amazing. I visited, that was several years ago, and that place, so I have to take some water because I get dry. That place was like pretty amazing. The energy that comes off that pyramid is amazing. I mean, I could feel it. Not everybody feels that, because I was sitting there and I was going, oh, wow. I could feel, I don't know how to say it. I could feel like a vibration inside of, like, in my chest. I could feel a vibration And I was talking to other people and I said, do you feel like a vibration? They're going, no, no, don't feel anything. But we weren't allowed to climb the steps or anything at that time. But it was just being next to a pyramid like that. And it's so massive when you're standing next to it. It's very, very massive. The only thing I'm not sure about is the building technique. The angles and everything are really perfect, but it's more like stone with a mortar, like a cement in between the stones. The stones are rougher. I think it was done probably later after the Egyptian pyramids, but the pyramids do have the same slope. They have the same mathematical sides to them, their height. It's just the way that they were made. It looks like a little bit rougher, but they're still within the norms of like, it's not like cut like the Egyptian pyramids are cut. It's not like cut stone. It's more like stone that's more roughly hewn, and then they put mortar in between the stones, and then they make the blocks go up, but the angles are still perfect. So I think they were done at a little bit later date. And what they were used for is that there were tombs that were found in those pyramids, and some of them have like big underground chambers. So I'm not really sure about the use of the Mayan pyramids compared to the Egyptian pyramids. I don't know if they were more used for ceremonial and not for energetic. That I wouldn't be sure about.
Something to do with balancing the timelines, the balance of time to make a smooth transition in time in the Mayan pyramids. Have you ever been to Peru, Amaro Mor, the Stargate portal?
No,
Is it-
I've heard about it, but I've read about it and that there, but no, I haven't been.
Is that a place that you're drawn to going? Because I think that's in your timeline. And Machu Picchu.
Yeah,
'Cause-
Machu Picchu, I've always wanted to go there. It's in my bucket list there. Machu Picchu, it's me, if I'm drawn to those places, I'm drawn a lot to see the engineering of how the site was made. That's what really, really draws me, because there's a lot of questions I have about the stonework and that. But Machu Picchu, and then I would like in Cusco, those areas. I haven't been there yet, but one day I'll probably get there.
Well, Machu Picchu feels like Pleiadians helped build it, and a lot of green energy. And you're Pleiadian, your ancestry feels very Pleiadian to me. So the structure and the energy there, it's like a must-have for you to go. Like,
Yeah, one day I'll get there. Have you been there lately?
No, I've never been, but I've been there psychically quite a few times, and I've remote viewed it a little bit, and it's like also levitation, also that special machinery.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful.
I've been there physically to all of those.
Oh wow. And how do you feel about them, Marilyn, when you went there? What did you
You know
feel?
what? I'm so weird in that I am not highly sensitive in a physical form. So it's not like I feel things so dramatically. It's just like I know when I'm supposed to be there visiting, and there's an exchange of energy. So I was at like Titicaca, Tiwanaku, Machu Picchu, all those. But what was really cool, awesome, was when I was in a little better shape, there's something called Wanu Picchu, which is the peak right next to Machu Picchu. And it's very dangerous to kind of go up there. And I was able to sit on the cone top, literally with my legs in it, Indian fashion, like just American Indian, like literally in the early morning as the fog cleared. And it
Oh,
was,
wow.
yeah, it was amazing.
Beautiful.
It was really amazing. It was like it was almost like the top of the mountain was in the sacral area, and then it was just like it felt like a goddess.
That's so neat.
Yeah, and Lake Titicaca has a lot of things going on there. Whoa, under the water, and ancient mysteries, you know, all kinds. What were you getting, Ileana? Your
Well,
eyes got really wide.
well, that's where the golden disc was placed under Lake Titicaca and then transferred under Amaro Moro, which is a Stargate portal.
Yes.
And Maldakians, the planet Maldak, also worked with crystalline towers and stuff because before it was destroyed, and they had sent their technology and they carved out tunnel systems with holographic interfaces and crystalline technology under Amaro Moro under Amaro Moro. Some call it a temple, some call it just a doorway or a stargate. It's a portal because through the golden sun disk, it's gold and it's crystalline. It takes you to the Andromeda galaxy to meet the Andromedans. And they have a lot of crystalline technology. Me and Merrily had discussed this in a previous show at one point, but it's all interconnected to the Syrians, the Atlanteans, Lemurians, Maldakians, founders of galactic beings who founded Atlantis. What I remember from my past life self, 2 million years ago, Atlantis started. So it's not like it's 11,000 or 12,000 or 9,000 years. It's older than that, much older.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Well, it's so delightful. It's so much fun to reconnect with more guardians, and it's just great fun. And I want, Karen, you to share your contact information. And it appears you're wearing one of your jewelry pieces around your neck.
Oh yeah.
So
it's my Atlantean necklace. Actually, I sell these. I sell these on my website.
hold it up because it's cut off on the screen.
Okay.
Yeah. So tell people how to contact you and the ceramics you do and etc. and where to get the books.
Are you putting the information, Merrily, on your website? Because
It'll be on the YouTube
okay,
and
great.
on the website both.
So on my website, because what I do is I work a lot with ceramics, because for me ceramics is the closest I can get like to something that's solid in stone. And most of my work that I do that's on my website, you can purchase. I have a lot of like ceramic pendants. I also do larger ceramic pieces that have fused glass that you can use as wind chimes. I do a lot of like small items in pottery, small bowls. But my emphasis is really on ancient petroglyphs. So a lot of the ceramics that I do, either they're in pendants or they're in like larger wind chimes that have like a petroglyph. So it looks like a stone reproduction of an ancient petroglyph. It's all on my website, and anything that I have right now, probably 350 items that are like for sale. So anytime anyone buys, there's always an automatic 10% discount at the checkout that's given. And whatever you buy, I send it. Usually I ship mainly just to Canada and the USA. So if anybody wants something that's outside at that moment, they just contact me via the website and I'll set up, give them an estimate for the shipping outside of the States and Canada. And what I do is that whenever I create all my work, anybody that's sensitive, they usually pick up on my energy. They pick up on the energy. Whenever they receive it, they say, oh my God, I can feel the energy coming off the pendant. So the work I do, I put energy into that work. So, and I also do a lot of sacred sigils, like archangel sigils. So I do archangel sigils mainly for Gabriel, Michael, Uriel, and also for Raphael, who's a healing angel. So I have the ancient sigils, and anybody who gets an archangel ceramic pendant, they always can feel the energy coming off it. There's protection. So my work, whatever I make, intuitively, I put a lot of like healing energy into that work. So they can, on my website, you can get my items. And also I have an Instagram account that usually on Instagram, every time I put something new And same on Facebook. Every time I put new creations, I always put them up there and they all link back to my website. And also from my website, or even if you go directly onto Amazon, you can get my books either in digital download or in print. And for people who don't like Amazon, I think Merrily, I sent you the links, Smashwords, usually any online bookstore. If you punch in my name, my pen name, which is K.D, it's my initials, Martel, Martel. Usually any bookstore will come up, because I also work with other publishing platforms. So if I give the example, if you go on to Smashwords, you can get my books downloaded into any digital form, even if you don't have one of those Kindle readers or whatever. You can get the download for a few dollars in PDF form, get it on your computer, and you can read it there. So it's pretty easy to get a hold of the books in that form.
At GaiaSacredCreations.com.
Yeah, GaiaSacredCreations.com.
Wonderful. And Ileana, you.
I have a beautiful spiritual slash psychic website, Messages from a Star Traveler. You can find it on the internet, and Merrily will provide the link in the video description. My YouTube channel, Awakening Cosmic Reality Show, where I share interesting cosmic history, connections with people's experiences, like this beautiful connection we're having today. Yeah, and I also write books on various topics: Atlantis, Anunnaki, Syrians, Galactic history. Those books can be found at Amazon and on my own website in PDF format, as well. Messages from a Star Traveler.
Oh, cool.
So thank you so much, Karen, for sharing your valid historical wisdom in a sci-fi fantasy adventure series, and in such a creative, entertaining way, and really for being an honest, humble, yet powerful soul that has high integrity with grounded integration. I really value that, Karen.
Yeah, thank you.
And Ileana, thank you for your valuable contributions, for connecting in this idea for the show, and for validating what Karen shared, which created great joy in her life. And we got lots of smiles out of you, Ileana. People tease you about that all the time.
Well, when I hear Galactic History Truth, I will smile, because Karen's books tell the truth, the galactic truth, the earth truth. When I read the books, I resonated, and I immediately started calling Merrily, which I know, like, when I get super excited, Merrily gets 5 phone calls from me.
Oh my God. Oh yeah, who's this woman? Yeah, no big deal, because I think she just gives me hints. I want to look her up.
Yeah, and I said to her, I was reading this Katie Martel's books about Guardians of the Crystals, and Merrily's like, slow down. What's the story of the book? What is the subject matter? Who is this Katie Martel? And I'm like, well, I'm getting downloads that she's connected to Atlantis, connected to the crystals, that she knows the true history, that she's writing the downloaded true history coming from the universe. And Merrily's like, this is intriguing. I'm going to go investigate her now.
So folks, please like, subscribe, and share with others. And I hope you enjoyed this show today. And you never know, your neighbor next door may be someone like Karen, a mother with a hardworking career who has extraordinary wisdom. So remember to be open, ask questions, even of strangers, and bring out the best in people. That's how our world will continue to rise, with more and more magical moments. Until next time, onwards and upwards.